Today we have seen thousands of workers, frontline healthcare workers, walk off the job in a protest against the chaos that has been imposed upon our healthcare system as well as their working conditions by Jason Kenney pretty much since the day they were first elected. We are calling on this government to reverse their misguided plan to fire 11,000 frontline healthcare workers in the midst of a pandemic, let alone at all. It is time for this kind of fighting and uncertainty and name-calling to stop. It is time for Albertans to come together, and the responsibility rests squarely with Jason Kenney. He must stop attacking the heroic public servants who have been going to work every day throughout this pandemic, working double shifts in order to keep Albertans safe, and enough is enough. I'm happy to take your questions.
Do you support this product?
I support the workers. Here's the thing. They have been victims of an unrelenting attack by this government. I have lost count of the number of pieces of legislation that I would argue are illegal, that have been introduced by this government in order to attack and negatively impact the working conditions of these and every other frontline worker. They are constantly thumbing their nose at the charter rights of working people in Alberta, and in particular frontline healthcare providers. Whether we're talking about these folks today or whether we're talking about doctors or nurses, it doesn't matter. And so this government has essentially poisoned the well. They have been, as I've said, relentless in their attack on these workers. And quite frankly, their plans to throw 11,000 of them out of work will crucially put the lives of Albertans at risk and undermine the quality of care within our healthcare settings, and it must stop.
In your opinion, is the job legal?
It's not a strike. A strike typically is something that the union organizes, and my understanding is that they have not done that. I'm sure the Labour Board will offer an opinion on it later today, but I'll wait to see what happens there.
What do you think the relationship with the workers and the government is at this moment?
Well, I think it's very clear that the government has poisoned the relationship between itself and all of its employees. And in particular, they have done that with frontline healthcare workers. We have watched with great dismay the deteriorating relationship between this government and our physicians. We have watched as physicians more and more are talking about leaving the province. We have watched as they've undermined the import of the work done by these folks who are outside of hospitals demonstrating right now. We have watched as they claimed that they weren't going to lay off nurses, and then the nurses get confronted with a letter saying that they will be laying off 500 nurses. It just never ends with these folks, and I would argue it's because at the end of the day, Jason Kenney cares more about destabilizing our public health care system in order to open the door for more privatized delivery than he does about ensuring quality health care at a time when Albertans need it absolutely more than ever in recent history.
Do you doubt, though? I mean, you said earlier that you support the workers, but the actual actions that they're doing, it's a wildcat strike. So do you doubt what their actions that they're taking?
I stand with the workers. They're at a breaking point. They have been put up against, I just am. They have been put up, their backs have been pushed up against the wall. They have been attacked consistently. Their work has been undermined. They have literally gone into work. They've worked double shifts. They've gone into some of the most unsafe workplaces in the province. They have done so working overtime. They put themselves and their families at risk. And what happens? They're told that their work is irrelevant. They're told that their work is not frontline. They're told that they are being paid too much. They're being told they have to give up their pensions, like completely give them up. And then they're being told that they will be fired. And then they're told, show up to work. And somehow any problem that arises from you not showing up to work is your fault. That is unsustainable. There is a point at which common sense and actual leadership must step in. It is this government that has created this kind of poisoned relationship, and it is this government that must take responsibility for calming the waters and getting folks back to work.
Time for about one more. Contracting out. I mean, obviously the government seems to be persistent in pursuing that avenue now. But firstly, like, how much debt should government be willing to take on to support public services during the pandemic?
Well, let us be very clear. The government has been exceptionally successful at lying to the people of Alberta since they first announced the contracting out of 11,000 people. If you look at their documents, it is very clear that the $600 million that they are talking about saving is not connected to the contracting out of 11,000 Albertans. That money, they can't articulate how much money they will save. And in fact, I would argue it's very likely they will save nothing, because to ask the private sector to hire people for $19 or $20 an hour to go into an unsafe situation, you can bet they will negotiate a hazard pay premium. So the government itself has not actually, when you look deeply at their documents, suggested that they are saving a single dollar from contracting out 11,000 frontline healthcare workers. That is purely ideological. Their $600 million is about other things that they are doing to save money, like raising long-term care rates, like raising home care rates, like raising fees on drugs. That's where they're getting their $600 million. It is not in this $11,000 or 11,000 person firing, mass firing. That is purely ideological and nothing else.
We're out of time.